Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Welcome everyone to Congregation Road of Sholem. My name is Rabbi Julie Carroll. I'm joined on the Bima this evening by our senior Rabbi Ben Spratt, our senior cantor Shayna DeLoe, soon to be cantor Emily Short. We're so grateful to J. David Williams and Corey Schutzer for bringing music into our worship more powerfully, and to Marjorie Rosen and Jill Schultz, who are helping to welcome you all at the door. We're so grateful to them, to Jarrett, who is beaming us out to the world, and to Daniel, who is going to help us with video tonight. It takes a lot of people to bring Shabbat services to this community, and we're so grateful to all of them. Today is March 31st, and March 31st is International Transgender Day of Visibility. And this has become an increasingly important day as more and more work has been done, not only in this community, but in so many Jewish communities, to make sure that when we talk about belonging in Jewish community, that we mean it. When we talk about inclusion, that we mean everyone, and raising up the profiles and the stories of fellow transgender members of our community and well beyond it, to help broaden our understanding of their story, of their Torah, of their wisdom. And so we're especially blessed that March 31st is on a Friday night, because it could make this Shabbat a Shabbat honoring and recognizing the contributions, the voices, and the fundamental value of so many of the transgender people who join and constitute and strengthen Jewish community, but also our world. We are really blessed that our honored speaker tonight is Dr. Joy Ladin. Dr. Joy Ladin is a widely published essayist and poet, literary scholar, and nationally known speaker on transgender issues. From 2003 to 2021, she held the David and Ruth Gottesman Chair in English at Stern College for Women of Yeshiva University. Her gender transition and return to teaching in 2008 made her the first openly transgender employee of an Orthodox Jewish institution. Dr. Ladin holds a PhD in American Literature from Princeton University and a BA from Sarah Lawrence College. Since coming out as transgender in 2008, she has become nationally recognized on the tangled intersection of literature, Judaism, and transgender identity. Her poetry collection, The Book of Anna, was awarded the National Jewish Book Award in Poetry. In 2019, Keshet recognized her work with a Hachamat Lev Award. She has been a featured speaker on TEDx and the On Being podcast with Krista Tippett. Dr. Ladin is the author of 12 books, including a memoir of gender transition, Through the Door of Life, that was a finalist for the National Jewish Book Award, and the winner of Forward Fives Award. And she's also the author of 10 books of poetry. She's been awarded a National Endowment for the Arts Writing Fellowship, a Fulbright Scholarship, among so many other honors. And she wanted me to share with you her sadness that illness prevented her from joining us in person for this evening. But we are so grateful that we're going to be able to weave both her story and some of her beautiful poetry throughout services tonight through video. So now I turn it over to Dr. Ladin to introduce a little bit of herself and her story to you on the wall.
Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for honoring me by inviting me to speak with you on this Trans Day of Visibility. And thank you for holding up the trans community by observing Trans Day of Visibility, particularly at this time when trans people are under attack around the country and really around the world. For me, trans identity has always been intertwined with my Jewish identity. Both were ways that I've known I was different from the people around me as long as I can remember. But my trans identity was a difference that I grew up feeling was both shameful and wrong, but also really dangerous. That if I revealed who I was, if I was visible to my family, to my friends, to my community, I would be seen as monstrous or unlovable and be expelled, or possibly worse. So I consciously lived in hiding and believed that my life depended on maintaining my cover and passing as the boy everybody thought I was. But my parents, particularly my mother, was proudly Jewish. She'd grown up in a Montreal ghetto and been subjected to intense anti-Semitism. And she believed that she was not religious particularly, but she believed that it was important that her children be raised to be visibly Jewish, to know that they were different and to be open and proud about and proud of that difference. And so my Jewish identity actually taught me how to be an openly trans person, how to be visible as a trans person. When I started living as myself in my mid-40s, I had no experiences of being visibly trans, but I had a lot of experience in being visibly and proudly Jewish. I had no experience of my trans identity connecting me to other people. I thought of it as only something that separated me from other people. But my Jewish identity told me that being different can also be a way of connecting to people in the present, to people around the world, to people you'll never meet, to a past and to a future. All things that trans people, when I was growing up, and really trans people today, I think few of us have that sense when we're growing up. So when I started writing poetry, which I began doing at a very, in grade school, I was extremely conscious of these two differences. And I knew that I couldn't write poems and show them to anybody if they were about my trans identity, if they might out me. But I wanted to write poems that were openly Jewish, particularly poems drawn on the Torah and on the Holocaust. But I worried about that. I thought, well, I remember I was like 8 or 9 years old and thinking, well, but I'll lose audience members if I'm visibly Jewish in my poetry this way, right? Of course, I did not have an audience then, but I'm like thinking, what if people don't get the references? So being visibly Jewish enabled me to wrestle with questions that minority writers and artists struggle with all the time, which is how much to make ways that you're different part of your art, how much to foreground it. And it gave me practice in doing that. And when I tried to use poetry to write things about being trans, I often coded them and hid them in poems that seemed to be only about Jewish subjects. For example, the first poem in my first book, Rabbi Jose the Angel, is about a rabbi who's born with wings, who's visibly different and has wings. So to me, I knew that was about the way that I felt about being trans, but here was a hero who was not hiding their difference. But everybody else, it was just a poem about being Jewish and the Jewish guy, miraculous legend, whatever.
So as we think about lifting up the Torah of so many in our community, we are honored that we are going to bring 3 new Torah scholars to our Bima tomorrow. We're excited to bring them forward to kindle the lights of this special Shabbat. Amit Herzig, Isabella Zeichner, and Zoe Tuckman. We celebrate with your families and invite you forward to kindle the Shabbat lights as we begin our service. Page 2 for the blessing in your Siddur. Mazel tov, we're so proud of all of you. Our service is going to continue with Lecha Dodi, welcoming the Sabbath bride into our midst, which you can see on the walls or on page 20. Before the final verse, we will invite you to rise and face the door toward the back.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zacho b'dibur echad, Hishmiyanu el hamiyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, L'shem u'tiferet ve'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mekor haberacha. Nerosh mikedem nesucha, Sof ma'aseh b'makshava tehila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Hitoreri, toreri, Ki va'orech kumi ori. Uri, uri, shir daberi, Kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam b'simcha uv'tzola. Toch emunei am segula, Boi chala, Boi chala. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nikabela.
Please be seated. As we move toward Ma'ariv services, we're going to see the first of two videos from Dr. Layden featuring her poetry. The first is on her poem, Wrestling.
This is another more personal example. It's called Wrestling. For both Jews and trans people, the story of the Torah that this draws on, which is the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel, both Jews and trans people recognize that as a story about transition. It's a story about becoming a new version of yourself. Jacob goes through this and he gets another name and really another destiny. He gets the name Israel, and trans people going through transition, of course, often come out with different names, different destinies. And like many trans people, before Jacob makes this transition, he has to separate himself from the life that he has. He sends his family and everything that he owns across the river, and he stays alone. We don't know why he does that. While he's alone, he encounters a stranger, it seems to be an angel, and he wrestles all night, and he can't win. He can't defeat the angel, but he holds on until dawn, when the angel needs to leave. And that's how Jacob wins. And I think that's a lot of how trans people win. We hang on, even against a world that is always trying to defeat us and wound us. A world we know we can't win over, but we can we can fight to a draw. And in that fight, we become who we really are and create a new future for ourselves. When I wrote this poem, it's about me and my father. And I think you'll hear that. Wrestling. You wish you'd stayed on your family's side. Not that you're losing, not at all. The angel's wings snap in the vice of your thighs. The angel gropes, searching out the sinew of light, the blessing you stole in disguise from a father who could only love what he couldn't recognize. The angel threatens to kill, to die, claims to be your father's God, your father himself, abashed and blind, the fear that took his eyes. You wish you could let him go, lose to keep him alive. Dissolving in the breaking light, he begs you to let him fly, his feathers melting, running down your thigh. So to me, this was mostly about this ambivalent relationship with my father, wanting to hold on, wanting to let go. But I snuck in things about my trans experience, a father who could only love what he couldn't recognize. That was true in my case of my father. My father could only love me as the boy he thought I was, not as who I really was. After I came out and was living as myself, I found to my surprise that the meaning of the poem completely changed. Now that I was visible as a trans person, it started to be read as a poem about trans identity, as though the angel that I'm wrestling with is this old male self that I can't let go of and I can't hang on to, and this very difficult part of transition, or maybe about queerness in general. And so it's astonishing to me the way that becoming visible as a trans person is actually given new and different meaning to my work.
We invite you to please rise as you are able for the call to prayer, the Baruch, page 28.
Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai ai yai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai yai, yai lai lai lai, yai ai.
Standing as we are able as we turn to Shema on page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
I invite you to join me in reading the words on the wall. We must reshape our world. Transgender Day of Visibility is not just a day of awareness. We have long been written out of history as if we do not exist, as if we have never existed. And yet, despite the invisibility, we have come to understand ourselves anyway. Transgender Day of Visibility is our collective call. We exist. We have always existed, and we continue to exist. But we cannot call out alone. We must come together in community to amplify our message, to declare to the world we are human beings. Our experiences are valid. Consider us not only in death and in tragedy, but in life and in joy. Celebrate with us in our life-affirming joy of gender euphoria. It is terrifying to be told you do not exist and to respond defiantly that you do. But in the midst of this vulnerability, there is strength and community. To every trans person who has felt invisible, you are valid, we see you, and you are not alone. To everyone of every gender, we must reshape our world for it to include all of us. May we build a world that rejoices in everyone as they are, and may there be no need for closets anymore. Our Song of Redemption, Mi Chamocha, page 40. Venu, page 42.
shelter from life's storms.
As we turn now to our prayers for healing, we hold in our hearts and we'll say the names aloud of anybody that we know who is struggling in mind, body, and spirit. And we especially think of tonight, along with our prayers for healing, anybody who is living in fear, anybody who is feeling erased, anybody who is not able to live as their true self for whatever reason. We think of as a community this Shabbat, Sandy Sarabin, Tracy Lustig, Cassie Lustig, Michael Humans, Eli Morrison, Paulette Kohan, Patricia Horn, Louise Weisbord, Stephanie Lasher, Stephen Schwinder, Perry Soskin, Erica Soskin, Jane Wisen, Richard Carver, Shira Eliza, Yosef Chaim Ben Chaviva, Ricky Dessen, Robert Appel, Zvi Leshetz, Ellen Baxt, Mark Miller, Ellen Kirshner, Bobby Waldman, Mark Margulies, Debbie Provis, and Paul Biddleman. Are there additional names of people you are praying for this Shabbat? We continue with our prayer for healing, Misha Berach.
At this time, it is an honor to invite the community to please rise as you're able for our tefillah, page 46.
That my mouth may declare your praise. Yalla lai lai lai, 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 yalla lai lai lai. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi that my mouth may declare your praise. La 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 la, ya 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 la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot U'mevii Geula lifnei b'neihem Leman Shemo be'ahava Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham v'Ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai Mechayei hakol atah Rav l'Hoshia Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem Mechakel chayim bechesed Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim Somech noflim v'rofeh cholim U'matir asurim U'mekayem emunato Lishenei afar Michamocha bal gevurot U'mido melach Melech meimit u'mechayei U'matzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman atah lehachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei hakol Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh U'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah Baruch atah Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
Ha'el hakadosh.
The words of Adrian Rich. Invisibility is a dangerous and painful condition. When those who have power to name and to socially construct reality choose not to see you or hear you. When someone with the authority of a teacher, say, describes the world and you are not in it, there's a moment of psychic disequilibrium, as if you looked into a mirror and saw nothing. Yet you know you exist and others like you, that this is a game with mirrors. It takes some strength of soul, and not just individual strength, but collective understanding, to resist this void, this non-being into which you are thrust, and to stand up, demanding to be seen and heard, and to make yourself visible, To claim that your experience is just as real and normative as any other can mean making yourself vulnerable, but it is only in those who step out into the world, out into the waters, that create a chapter of the new. We continue on page 60, Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
As we turn now to silent prayer, for those wishing additional words of reflection and meditation, you'll find these on the walls, or simply turn into your own hearts to find your own prayers as we continue in silence.
This next piece is a modern midrashic interpretation of Genesis 1:27 and 1:31, playing on the concept that you read up on our walls and was written for the 3 openly transgender and non-binary cantors in history. The first, my classmates and my dear friends who will be ordained on May 7th this year. And it was lovingly given to our music team here at Erev Shalom. This text, which on face value seems to enforce the gender binary, is actually counterintuitive. It subverts binary expectations, celebrating masculinity and femininity separate from the confines of gender, and affirming that all people, regardless of gender and gender expression, are made b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. Today, on Transgender Day of Visibility, we celebrate all in our community and all in our world for exactly who they are. Each one of us made just like God, just as we were made.
Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elohim bara oto. Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, zachar unkeva bara otam. And on the 6th day, masculine and feminine God made, and in God's image were they, each of them like God, just as they were made.
Va'er Elohim et kol asher asa, hidho ma'od. And God looked at God's creation, it was very good.
Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elohim bara oto. Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, zachar unkeva just as they were made. Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elohim bara oto. Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, zachar unkeva just as they were made. And on the 6th day, masculine and feminine God made, and in God's image were they, each of them like God, just as they were made. Each of them like God, just as they were made. Each of them like God, just as they were made.
We're grateful now to bring.
Growing up,
Perfect.
When I was growing up, every time I said I to someone, like if I said to my mother, I'm hungry, I knew that no matter how true what I was saying was, it was also partly a lie. Because the people I was talking to would think I meant the boy that they thought that I was, and I knew that I was someone else. The only time that I said I and knew that the person understood who I meant by I was when I talked with God, which I did a whole lot, since God was the only one who really knew who I was. After after transition, when I was before transition, I wrote a lot of poems like Wrestling, which they're personal without being personal. They're in the voice of somebody else, a character, or they're so oblique nobody can tell what I'm really saying about myself because I had to hide who I was. So after transition, I thought, well, now I can just write poems in the first person, and it'll be so much easier than the crazy displacement that I was doing before. But I found I couldn't, because I didn't know who I meant by I. I hadn't grown into myself enough to know who I was. And so I wrote a lot of poems in the second person addressed to a you, but like Wrestling is. But I realized that I wanted to write psalms, like David's kind of catchy psalms. And as I started writing them, I realized I can say I in these poems. Because I've always said I to God, and God has always known what it meant, so I don't need to know who I'm becoming in order to speak in the first person in these poems. And this is one from my book of Psalms. The you in the poem is God, and the me is actually the real autobiographical me. It's time the soul you planted in the soil of this unhappy body learned to love you without scratching, to recognize and melt beneath the kisses you disguise as bitterness and licorice lips and galaxies of glimmering suns dangling in drops from dripping leaves. It's time for you to plant me among your dripping leaves, and time for me to glimmer there in ecstasy. Time for you to make me an instrument of your beauty, and time for me to play the music of you that can only be made of and through the holes you make in me. I think it's not a coincidence that when I'm speaking to God and saying I in this way, it's also the first time that I'm embracing the sense of brokenness that I had as a trans person. You know, you transition middle age, there are all of these ways that your body is never gonna match your gender identification. And I felt those as failures and brokenness, and it was hard for me to live with. But as you can see in that poem, the speaker is saying to God, use what's broken in me so that I can make music, the music of you. That fusion of trans experience and Jewish tradition, because I learned to write psalms from the examples in the Torah. But that poem, really the entire book, is infused with this trans experience, starting when I was a kid, of being alone with God and just really being able to talk about the hard stuff directly with God. That was something that has become a huge part of my post-transition life as a poet. But I've moved from the very personal focus of psalms to looking for ways that the combination of my trans experiences and identity and Jewish tradition can create kinds of language that really can speak to everyone, which is, of course, what the Torah is mostly trying to do. So I wrote a series of adaptations of texts. This is an adaptation of Psalm 118 for a sequence called Gender Isn't the Only Transition, because I realized, people are changing all the time and going through these processes. And each poem is in the voice of a different aspect of transition. It's what that aspect of transition says to us. This one is called My Voice is the Voice of Becoming. I know I'm pushing you hard. Despair and bitterness swarm you like bees. I hear you crying out to God, and I hear God answer, shouting the love that is your future, prying open your lids. God hurts you. God swarms you. God's right hand lifts you up and pushes you down again. But God won't give you up for dead. Your life is a day that God has made. God has unlocked the lies you told yourself were you. They have become the gates of truth God is leading you through. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
With gratitude to Professor Layden for bringing your wisdom, your reflections, your poetry into the space. I love that image of bringing divinity, bringing theology into our understanding of self and our own willingness to be visible in our world. As we come to our next prayer, for me, I think my favorite liturgical move is the way we end the Aleinu. Earlier in our service, we of course proclaim the anthem of God's unity, but as we come to the end of our service, we lift up the exact opposite image. We end our service saying, one day in the future, one day, God and God's name will be one. That right now, God is fractured, that God's name is split into 1,000 different forms. But one day, there will be a day when we get to gather those broken pieces, those shards back together. And so often I have lifted this up as an anthem suggesting to us that so long as our world is fractured, so too is God. But also wonder if there's another way to frame this. And perhaps the very way that gives definition to the experiment that is this space, this community, is what it is to hold a tradition that imagines that there is at least 8 billion refractions of that divine face. And that it is only in our willingness to go and see in the face of another a sense of God shining back at us, to create a space in which each of those refractions can be visible, that we gain the capacity to see the wholeness that is only realized together. For all of us, as we gather in prayer, some of us, we enter this space alone. Some of us, we enter this space in connection, but we always end our service with the idea that the ultimate vision is that each of us come together seeing that we are needed and necessary, that each of us come away from the space feeling that we are connected into something larger, seen and held as our vision and place and purpose. It is an honor to invite you to rise now as you are able as one community for Aleinu, page 282.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula liyotzeh bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, v'lo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu gahem, v'gor aleinu kecho hamonam, v'anachnu משתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
As we turn now to page 294 for Mourner's Kaddish, we bring into the space the names of those that we have loved and lost along the journey of our lives. And as we speak into the space, their names, we lift their legacies into our hearts. If you hear the name of a loved one you're remembering, or if you offer the name of a loved one you're remembering, we invite you to rise as you're able and remain standing. We also have the custom, and for those who wish here at Roda Shalom, to come to the front to place stone onto slate, enacting a ritual of memory and making tangible the presence of love and connection. We begin with the recent losses in our community. Avrazi Skapoff, Blossom Fox, Daniel Schechter, Marvin Segor, Donald Wren, Rita Margulies, Sigmund Landis, Louis Weinberg, Sharon Kasdan, and Kalman Abraham Saul. If there are others in the period of Shiva, the first 7 days of mourning, we invite you to rise and offer their names. Thank you. Those in the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning, we invite you to rise as you're able. Those within the first year of mourning. Beth. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you. Thank you. We remember the Yortzites, the anniversaries of death. Of Zachary Axelrod, Tressa Barnett, Godfrey Becker, Mildred Bear, Seymour Berkowitz, David Blitzer, Paul Bookstaver, Ruth Bressler, Gussie Broadwin, Rhonda Brown, Avram Cohen, George Cohen, Arthur Collin, Doris Elfman, Jack Elias, Nathan Epstein, Harold Feldman, George Fishman, Esther Fox, Daisy Furst, Lawrence Gardner, Joan Gerard, Manola Goldsmith, Dorothy Gomez, Victor Gottbaum, Angelina Grandizio, Dr. Harry Greif, Harold Horowitz, Sam Horowitz, Brian Ingber, Lester Jarrett, Esther Joel, Melvin Kahn, May Kanarek, Blanche Klein, Joy Klein, Gil Kohan, J. William Lampert, John Lincalis, Elaine Lieb, Harold Lorber, Stephen Mandel, Jenny Mann, Ann Marbett, Jules Martyr, Wolf Matzner, Arthur Miller, Norma Morris, Barbara Munviz, Saul Nathan, Barbara Reish, Nat Romanoff, Morris Rosentover, Marjorie Rothbard, Dorothy Scherl, Herbert Schiller, Richard Schneider, Francesca Slovin, Marilyn Snyder, Louis Staff, Marilyn Talley, Professor Melvin Unger, Candace Van Stryker, Joseph Walk, Morton Wasser, Fred Weil, Trudy Weil, Jack Wolf, Paul Wolfman, Lily Zimmerman, and Max Zuckerman. If there are others remembering, we invite you to rise and offer the names. Thank you. Thank you. Wayne. Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. Zichronam Libracha, may their memories forever be a blessing. As our custom at Road to Shalom, we invite you to rise as you're able as one community. For the words of the Mourners Kaddish together, page 294. Yitzkadal v'yitzkadash shmei rabbah, bi'alma divra chiruteh v'yamlich machuteh, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayeh d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe shmei rabbah mavorach le'olam u'lamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Damiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim. Alinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom. Alinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom.
May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn here and comfort to all who are bereaved everywhere. As we say together, Amen. So while everyone is standing, I want to invite everyone to stretch the neck, perhaps even the spine a little bit. I want you to turn your faces far enough that you can find a face, a spark, of someone you have not yet met, a face of divinity you've not yet met, I would love for you to actually move and greet that face and begin a new connection. Community is built by each and every one of us. We're going to invite you all to participate in that right now, to wish them a Shabbat Shalom. Hello. Hello, son. So just a few brief announcements. If people need a rest, you're welcome to take one, but it really are a few just brief announcements. We're getting very excited about tomorrow's Havdalah game night here at Roda Shalom. We're looking forward to a fun time together tomorrow at 6 p.m. Everyone over 21 is invited. Just gives you a little feel of what the night's going to be like. Hopefully you're excited by that. So Cantor DeLoe and Louis Glazer are going to be leading us in Havdalah, and then on to the games. There's plenty of food, cocktails, fun, in the spirit of April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Adult ensemble.
Adult ensemble. We got a few other surprises for you, so you should come. Passover, FYI, is a few days away. If you have not made some plans and need some recommendations, come pounce on us. We're happy to tell you. And by the way, we have one of those recommendations. Cantor DeLoe and I are going to be leading a Passover Seder called Raising Sacred Questions, a virtual Passover Seder, this Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. You can tune in from anywhere in the world, and we can all be together in community, and a wonderful chance to bring Roda Shalom together in Passover spirit. Through this virtual experience, we'll also make it interactive, okay? So it's an opportunity not just to be able to have someone guide you through it, but you actually get to inject and change our adventure a little bit as you get to share your wisdom. We will need you to register though, so make sure that you go online and so you can get the appropriate link. Finally, we have an exciting CRS outing planned in May. We invite you and your family to spend a fun day at the Bronx Zoo on Sunday, May 7th. Right here in our own city, we have one of the largest wildlife conservation parks. We'll get to see close-up beautiful animals from all over the world. Make sure, again, you register. With this, it is an honor now to invite the wonderful, shining wisdom Torah faces of our fabulous B'nai Mitzvah, and an honor to invite up Amit and his family, and Isabella and Zoe and both of your families. I want to invite you all up to join us here on the Bima as we continue with Kiddush on page 5.
Except your camera gets to stand behind you.
Right in front here in the center of the table.
I'm gonna give you another book.
Where's Zoe?
Oh, she's coming. Zoe, come in the center. Here's one in here. Where's Zoe? Yes. Okay, so first we're gonna do Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo.
Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho.
Oh, what a beautiful color!
Baruch atah